So I want to set a scene for us. The church is in a historic crisis. Christian nationalism is on the rise. Clergy integrity is being brought into question. And the gap between the rich and the poor continues to grow. And you might think I'm talking about the moment that we're in right now, but I'm actually referring to a moment sometime in the middle of the 4th century when the desert fathers and mothers began to gather others around them to prophetically reimagine a way of life in discipleship that they believed could reinvigorate the life of the church. And this 4th century scene would equally describe events unfolding in the 6th century and in the 13th century and in the 16th century. In each major moment of church crisis, one of the primary responses that emerges during that crisis is a new imagination for the monastic witness. So in our present season of crisis in the church, there are so many ways that we could respond to that crisis, but let me just name a few. First, we know that culturally we're living through an epidemic of loneliness, and yet there are very few pathways of deepening spiritual friendship in the life of the church. Demographically, the sector of the population that's growing the most is adult singleness, which for those following Jesus means a pathway to celibacy. And yet there are no real structures in the church to give single people an imagination for living into a celibate life in a way which that is held by the church. And then we're also seeing experientially that people are longing for deeper spiritual formation. And yet again, there are very few pathways that allow people to grow deeper in their life with Jesus in community into deeper commitment. Friends, people need invitations compelling enough to give their whole lives to God. The challenge and the crisis that the church is facing is perhaps that the church has not asked enough of us. And the religious orders have always provided a challenge to the rest of the church to live lives of greater faithfulness to the life of Jesus. So the monastic tradition has always had at the center the formation of communities, the practice of shared commitments, oriented and centered on the love of God and oriented to the crisis that the church is facing. But this tradition has been mostly unavailable for about 500 years to the Protestant church. The tradition of dispersed religious orders and monastic communities has been out of reach for about 500 years. And the Catholic monasteries around the world are closing. And the number of men and women joining religious orders has been on a steady decline since the 1960s. So the Order of the Common Life is reimagining and reinvesting in the monastic witness for the 21st century. We currently have about 150 members in formation throughout the world, and we expect to welcome another 100 postulants in January of 2025. Now, we are innovating on an ancient tradition, but the very good news is that innovation has always been part of the tradition. So the rule of St. Benedict imagined the monastic life into community. St. Francis comes along and kind of reimagines what the life of a monk could be outside the monastery walls and into the cities among the poor. St. Ignatius of Loyola reimagines the tradition on mission into the world. So in the Order of the Common Life, we invite people into the traditional pathway of monastic formation. And because we are so committed to being part of the tradition, we've maintained the language around postulancy, novitiate, and vows. And listen, I know that those are very strange words. But we have made a conscious decision to keep them because we believe being part of the tradition is very important. And we do a very good job of helping people come to understand what these things mean as they come into our formation process. So in addition to being a dispersed religious order throughout the world, we're also trying to reimagine the monastery. In the next 5 years, we hope to break ground on the first of what we hope will be a network of urban monasteries. This first urban monastery will hold about 30 members of the Order of the Common Life with an additional 30 or more rooms for overnight retreat guests looking for an in-city monastic retreat experience where they can live like a monk a handful of days, a few times a year. Friends, we're thinking about vision over the next 50 to 100 years. And what we really need is we need help thinking through a sustainable financial model while maintaining our integrity to the tradition. And we need a lot of help thinking about how to tell the story in a variety of different ways, because we know that most people are not thinking about monasticism and the way in which the religious orders can invigorate the life of the church. I look forward to speaking with you. Thank you so much.